Oh, you joined me.
Didn't want to interrupt.
Sorry,
Sorry, sis, no, woke you.
I've just been sitting here for an hour.
Well, look, I'm more important than you, so you have to wait. I figured as soon as the smell of the cigar went through the internet, you'd wake up.
Yes, I can feel my lungs burning as we speak. Did you see the name of this episode?
Well, I think you embodied it rather well.
Yeah, the Liberals something.
I can understand that. I will say, though, and this is damning with faint praise, Angus is an infinitely better package from a marketing point of view than Susan Ley ever was.
I don't disagree, but G and I just had a very robust discussion around this. I totally
am robust discussions.
Robust, you like that? That's my diplomatic.
I use that word all the time.
So the way I see it, and I think most people understand this in the chat, we are preaching to the converted. Most of us are aligned, yes. At least 80%, right? So from a branding point of view, purely looking at this as a brand expert, rolling another woman is a terrible look. I know she was a terrible leader. I'm not disagreeing, just so everyone knows. But Susan Ley getting rolled by yet another white man, it just, to the people that you're trying to sort of welcome to the fold, it doesn't present well. And especially on the top of the whole Moira deeming thing. It's just, it looks like the Liberal Party has a problem with women. That's how it presents. Look, and we can argue in the weeds about the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what. Sorry to override your little your use of G's comment there. What brand of cigar? It's a St. Petersburg Hermitage No. 1.
Oh yeah, no, there's well.
Oh yes, yeah. No, that's right. It's you bought a box of them last week. Look, you're absolutely right, but also the woman problem line has been so overused that I don't think it has any power anymore. It's like people calling Trump. Okay, all right. It's like calling Trump a womanizer, or all the different pejoratives they throw at him. Everyone who is going to be affected by that line has been affected by that line. The people who are left don't care.
I don't disagree, but I think it would be reasonable to suggest that we do need to welcome more people into the fold. And I'll give you an example away from politics, and hopefully this sort of illustrates my point better. So there's a lot of content creators right now, because it's become fashionable to be outwardly anti-woke and outwardly black pill, right? And I'm not going to name names because I'm not trying to throw shade. I'm just merely pointing out something. And I saw a video from one of these guys the other day. Now, typically they're funny, right? Like, they're funny, but they're picking on low-hanging fruit. They're picking on all the wokies, the particularly ridiculous ones, right, that you and I would call freaks and whatever.
Sure.
And so when you're making fun of those low-hanging fruit, right? And if you give me a witty quip, or you're clever, or it's like satirical, whatever, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can pay that. But this particular video was a very, very morbidly obese woman doing Pilates. And she's like, she opens up her reel saying like, oh, I love fitness. I'm so obsessed with fitness. And it goes on to show her working out. And this particular person just sits there laughing at the screen and making fun of this person. Now, again, low-hanging fruit. Okay, you're picking on a morbidly obese woman who's just giving it a crack.
It's the definition of punching down, but sure, yes.
Correct. And so the reason I give this example is that that's not how you win people over. So remember, you've got the woke numpties, right? Like, they're never coming back. They're too far gone. We know that. But what you have is your average moderate person who's going to look at content like that and go, yeah, I don't want to be on that side. Like, the other side's crazy, but the side where you just pick it on people, that comes across pretty mean. Okay. And so I use this analogy for the Liberal Party, because it's like the Liberal Party just can't seem to present women in a way that seems like you're championing a woman. Like, look at Jacinta Price. She is an amazing person in the Liberal Party, and she just, like, they roll her out when it's suitable. That's how it presents. Moira Deeming, she gets called a Nazi by her own party leader, and then the backers of the Liberal Party fund the guy who defamed her and was found in court of law to have defamed her. It just paints a really ugly picture. And the reason I say it matters is half of this population are women. And I'm no wokey, and I'm no victim and I don't sit here and play the woman card often, but I look at it, I'm like, and it's in the comments now, oh, women are the worst thing that happened to voting. Look, we can all have a bit of fun and go, yeah, look, it's not great. And I would say that. But if that's your genuine sentiments, if you genuinely think that women are a problem and women shouldn't be at the table, then I would argue you guys have gone too far, the other side, and no one likes seeing that pendulum swing too far. There has to be a moderate middle.
I'm going to disagree with you on the basis that I think the only example that you've given that wasn't genuinely based on that particular individual's incompetence was Moira Deeming. I agree with you wholeheartedly on Moira Deeming, and I don't think they would have ever done that to a bloke. I completely agree with you on her. On all of the others, so Jacinta Price is amazing. I count her as a friend, and her husband Colin. Every time, last time we saw each other, we both showed up to the CPAC conference. She saw me from the other side of the foyer, and she yells out, Topher, and she puts her hands up in the air and comes and gives me a big hug. All right, I count her as a friend. And I say this with genuine respect and indeed admiration for who she is and what she's done. She is only now beginning to become a polished political product. Let's not forget her upbringing was not in the big city. Her upbringing was genuinely in the communities that she represents. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for her to represent those communities. But that means that to the rest of Australia, she only really fits that pigeonhole. Now, she's worked incredibly hard on herself and she's developed her skills and she's become a genuine political performer now. And she's ready, I believe, for the prime time. But I would say, even as someone who is an admirer of her, she was not ready for the prime time up until about a year and a half ago.
Can I just touch on this comment quickly?
Yeah.
You guys, if that's what you take from this, you've misunderstood me. I agree with Topher. Just to be clear, let me be really clear. I agree that Susan Ley was completely incompetent. What I am talking about is strategy. What I am talking about is how it looks to other people who you need to persuade to come across to our side. Like, that's the point I'm trying to get at here. You guys are all in a fucking echo chamber. We all agree she was incompetent. But the other people, the more moderate people that we need to bring back over to try and either champion One Nation or the Liberal Party, they see that stuff. It looks terrible. And I just had another comment in there, women only care about feelings. That is untrue. You are this is not a helpful discussion. This is not helpful. There are genuine concerns. And as a woman on the conservative right, I have horrible feelings towards the women on the progressive left who have been championing men in women's spaces and all that nonsense. But to then have the people on my side that say women are the problem, I'm like, hang on a minute, is there no middle ground here? Can we just have a fucking conversation about how this is actually really troubling? I'm calling that shit out. It's all well and good to pile on women when they're on the woke left and make fun of them. But if you're going to sit here and have someone who's on your fucking team, who's here in your corner, and then say that women don't get to have a say because we're emotional, I'm sorry. I'm not going to stand beside someone that makes that crap. I'm trying to present it. Hang on. I'm trying to present it to a way that you guys see you're all in an echo chamber. You need to look beyond the people who agree with you. There are, 28 million people in Australia? What percentage of them vote? What percentage of them are women? You got to get the messaging right. We can sit here and argue policies all day, but at the same time, most people are not in the weeds looking at your policies. Most people see the headline clips, they see the front page of the Herald Sun or the Age, and they listen to these podcasts where people just parrot these headings. That's what they see. That's what I'm saying. From a brand point of view, it doesn't look good. And as I said, you can argue in the weeds all you like. That's my point.
So, Carly, when you said just before the show that you had a borderline headache, you didn't finish the sentence. You didn't finish the sentence that the headache was going to be for the rest of us. All right, that's that you didn't. That wasn't written into the terms and conditions. No, so what we're left with, though, Carly, is a situation where either someone like a Susan Ley has to be tolerated and allowed to continue in their position, because if she gets deposed, then the woman card will come out. It's going to be perceived badly. Or you have to just do what you have to do in order to get away from a leader that is literally the worst in the history of the party. Her polling was the worst. The party was directionless. They had no cut through on any issues. Just from a pure political performance point of view, she was abysmal. And I know that you agree with that. I'm not suggesting that you disagree with that. And so you either have to cop the you've got a woman problem argument all over again because you've deposed a woman, or you've got to leave her in that position. I don't think there's a good outcome, and I think honestly the choice they've made is the less bad one.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying is when you compound this over the last couple of years, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but people still remember. And from a messaging point of view, unless you're going to come out and do like a Pauline Hanson and say all the things that everyone wants to hear, the Liberal Party, the biggest issue, apart from all their infighting, that's one issue. Their brand is in the toilet. They stand for nothing.
It is. It is. Now, can I make an observation? I think that politics as a whole has a big woman problem. And I'm no feminist, but it seems to me that actually, if you look at the history of both the Labor and the Liberal Party, arguably less so the Greens, arguably they've managed to have more women in their ranks for longer and not run into these problems. But let me give you a couple of specific examples. And I know you know these, but let's just talk this through. Joan Kirner was the second female premier in Australia and was second only by a matter of months. I think it was West Australia had the first one just before her. She was installed as Premier of Victoria on the back of the John Cain era, which was a lot like the modern Daniel Andrews era. John Cain left the state with massive corruption scandals, massive debt, and a crippling crime problem.
They call that the poison chalice.
Correct. It wasn't the CFMEU back then. It was the Maritime Workers Union, MUA, or whatever they called themselves, the dock workers, which then when Kennett came in, when Kennett came in, he had to have the big showdown with them. That was because they were the CFMEU of their day, right? So the parallels are actually very, very clear. Now, what was very clear to me, and now not at the time I wasn't paying any attention to politics. It was before my time. But when I looked back on that, as I began to pay attention, I realized they celebrated Joan Kirner, first female Premier of Victoria, second in the whole of Australia. Yay, aren't we wonderful and progressive? Actually, all the blokes stepped back and said, no, you drink exactly like you said, the poison chalice. I believe the exact same thing happened with Julia Gillard. Kevin Rudd was trashing the Labor Party brand. He had to go, but none of the men wanted to step in because they thought the next election was unwinnable. Now, it so happens that the Australian public surprised them and she won. And then all the blokes were like, oh, shit, now we have to stab her in the back. And it was Kevin Rudd who managed to win that particular shit fight. And we had the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd debacle. But I genuinely think that they believed they were giving her a poison chalice, that she was facing oblivion, that her career was going to get ended by that election. I think they've done the same thing with Jacinta Allen in Victoria. Slightly different. The timing relative to the coming election was different. She's had more time than what Joan Kirner did and more time than what Julia Gillard did. So the parallel is not precise, but I think Andrews was under so much pressure from the crime issues and corruption issues, etc., that the timing was out of any of their hands. I think all the other blokes looked at each other and went, nah, let her have it. Let her take it. I think politically, there is that last percentage point of ruthlessness. I think men are more likely to have that. They're more likely to be psychopaths. They're more likely to have that cold political calculus.
Sorry, just to combat that, you've clearly never hung out with a big group of women before. Because
you're all bitches.
I can't. Can I just tell you?
there is a reason why, and often, yes, there's a woman behind them, but there is a reason why, most of your mass murderers are men, most of your murderous dictators are men. There is something, as a comedian does a great routine about how women, the crazy is evenly distributed. You've all got a little bit of crazy, right? Men, it's like normal, psychopath, normal, has a woman locked in his basement, normal, mass murderer, right? It's
with
like,
kiddies on Epstein Island.
Yeah, that's right. It just seems to be concentrated when it comes to men. And, we know that a psychopathic personality is attracted to power. They're attracted to high level corporate positions. They love the corporate high flying positions. And they love political positions. So they reckon about 1 in 100 men that gets born, something like that, is a psychopath, however they measure that.
100? That's incredibly high odds.
Well, it's funny because if you talk to divorced women, 100% of their husbands are psychopaths. So
no, they're all narcissists, Topher. Get it right. That's the wrong part of the triad.
Look, it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. Everything's a spectrum. But if you actually look into people who actually make it in politics and people who make it at the top end of the corporate world, it's about 1 in 25.
Yeah.
right? Which
It
is
doesn't
terrifying.
surprise me. You need to be a sociopath.
Yes,
You need to be
yeah.
it's a requirement, not necessarily to be an active sociopath, but to have those more sociopathic tendencies, that ability to disconnect, that ability to not be too empathetic. You can have like a virtuous presentation of empathy,
Oh
but whether
yeah,
or not you can actually believe it is
Oh,
a totally different thing.
sociopaths get very good at projecting what they know needs to be seen. But this is the thing: sociopathy actually has the potential to serve a valuable purpose in society. I would suggest to you that to be this word's going to stuff me up, an anesthetist, and to not go crazy. You've got to have an ability to detach. You're playing with people's lives 3-4 times a day, putting people to sleep and bringing them back. You get that cocktail wrong, you get their body weight wrong by a wide margin. You are playing with people's lives. Being a brain surgeon, operating on someone's brain while they're alive, I want that person to have the ability to detach from the gravity of the situation and to just treat it like they're just doing a thing. I don't know. I don't know how that works inside their heads.
I don't know. There's a movie about a guy named Hannibal Lecter that kind of ends differently.
Yeah. Okay. Look, and so, like I said, there is a healthy place for that in society.
There's a spectrum.
But anyway, yeah. And I would argue, for example, let's slip the dogs of war. The dogs of war are people that you want to keep in a kennel until there's a war. And they include both the vicious, but also the sociopathic. The person who is sitting there laying out a battle plan and saying, well, if I give this order, 10,000 men will die. If I give this order, only 8,000 men will die. So I'm going to give this order.
Yeah.
Like that's fucked up. But there are moments in time when it's necessary. So I'm actually, I've got a chapter in my book, In Defense of Arseholes. Well, I'm kind of like in defense of sociopaths. But it's the job of the rest of us to spot them and keep them away from the wrong places, because that's where they do an enormous amount of damage.
Is this real, or is that just like a funny? Because that's actually hilarious if that's real.
I just choose to believe that's real. I'm just going to go with it.
I want that to be real so bad. That's hilarious. No, look, I do agree with you. And my comment, and the reason I get worked up is like, we can't have commentary and discussions if we deal with absolutes. If it's always a woman problem, like there was a comment before, like, can we not have this discussion when Carly's menstrual? I'm like, guys, do yourselves a favor and not openly be so wildly sexist. Like, do me a favor. Like, keep your sexism in your head. It's a really bad look. And the reason I'm going to say this one more time is that we do actually have a bit of a problem with women in this country. Not all. Again, we're not dealing in absolutes. So if this doesn't apply to you, don't get offended. But there is an issue here where you're one or the other. There is no nuance. There is no gray. And, there are plenty of really talented people in the Liberal Party who are women, and probably in the Labor Party, although I don't know, I've seen enough of those guys and I'm not quite convinced they're talented. But because you guys have these discussions in absolutes, we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. And like, we have to, like, not say make deals with the devil, but we do have to get to a point where we can sort of restore some of this division in the country. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that kind of conversation just adds to the divide. I'm not saying you have to add a olive branch to everyone, but there has to be a point where we're going to have to get along with people. Like, do you know what I mean? And I just don't find this division helpful.
All right, we're 20 minutes in. I think your point has been well made. We were late today. I don't know if anybody noticed. It's not because of daylight savings. It's not because of daylight savings. It is, however, because of me. I will own this. This is entirely on me. So most of you would be aware that Susan Lay.
I'm never late.
Susan Lay has resigned. It's because I'm important, Carly. I have to be in more places at a time. I have to be in multiple places at once. Susan Lay has resigned gracelessly, in my opinion. And she's thrown her party under the bus and handed them a by-election that they did not want or need. They can't really win it. I mean, there is a pathway to victory for them, but it's very tricky, and it could very well backfire. And so they're in she's put them in a terrible spot, and it happens to be in my electorate where I live now. So I moved out of the big cities, and we decided we were moving out of Melbourne, and we decided we're not going to any of the big cities. We're done with the drama. We want the quiet country life. So I moved to a large regional town, and the drama followed me. So now I find myself at the epicenter of all of the political focus of the entire country for the next, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks or so until that election happens. Yeah, convenient. And this is a big one. By-elections are not normally a big deal. This is an exception. This will set the tone. This is literally, let me put it to you this way. This is the first chance that One Nation have had to prove that their bounce in the polls is real. And this is the last chance that the Liberal Nationals have to prove that it isn't. If One Nation perform really well at this election, they don't even have to win the seat. If they just perform really well, 30% primary, 25% primary, 35% after preferences, something like that, not even winning, that will prove beyond a shadow of doubt that this is not just protest polling. And it will put to bed this idea that they can't take seats at the next federal election. The Liberal National Party are fighting for their survival here. And I think that reality has begun to sink in, and we're going to see some games get played in the next 6 weeks.
I watched your video that you put up today on this, and
you need a better hobby.
Unfortunately, it's part of my job description these days. I know, everyone pity me in the comments section. No, it'd be interesting to see. I think with all of this upswing towards One Nation at the moment, it's going to be a real test of whether or not these polls are accurate. Like, obviously, the test pool for the polls of 1,500 people or thereabouts.
Yeah, 1,500 would be on the larger side. Yeah, 12 to 1,500.
Yeah, so it's one thing to see it in the polls. It's another thing to see if people are motivated to show up and actually come out for One Nation. I would like to think in your seat, given how rural it is and how decimated our farming sector and everyone out there is, that there'll be a change. But there's a part of me, and I've seen this sentiment online. There's a part of me that worries that I think a few people are go, hang on a minute, One Nation's the anomaly, and people know One Nation is Pauline Hanson. The One Nation candidate coming in, I don't know if we know who that person is yet, do we?
No, we don't. There's that's what the meeting was about tonight. It wasn't a candidate meeting. It wasn't a branch meeting. It was a public meeting for the branch. About 180 people showed up, which, given it's such short notice, that's pretty good. I mean, no, I'm going to name some politicians here, not because I'm having a go at them, but just to give you a reference point. Senator Matt Canavan, awesome guy, love him, and one of the genuine good ones. Like, I rag on the Nationals, and I feel bad for Matt because I'm kind of ragging on him as a part of that group. But I think he's one of the good guys. He put up a photo of his branch Christmas party. And I don't want to be unfair and say there was only a dozen, but there wouldn't have been much more than a dozen people. All right. And that's the branch. And now he's a senator, but that, I assume, was his local area branch. And he was there in person. And that's how many people came along. Liberal Party branches are limping along in different parts of this country on a dozen members. This is the Liberal Party. 180 people just showed up on short notice at a pub half an hour north of Albury to meet Senator Sean Bell and to see what's going on with One Nation in this by-election. That's an extraordinary amount of interest. They've had 60 people put their hand up to be candidates in this by-election. Now, I know a few of those people personally, but only a handful. So the vast majority of those 60 people are completely unknown to me. And I don't know what the caliber is like. Obviously, they only need one truly good person. The people that I know that have put their hands up are wonderful people. Are they the right person for this moment? And will they rise? And will they rise under the scrutiny? This is the thing. A by-election is not like being a candidate in a general election. In a general election, there's candidates all over the country and the media is focused all over the country. And unless you do something stupid, you can avoid the blowtorch. In a by-election, especially if you're the One Nation candidate in this by-election, you are going to cop the blowtorch. There is no getting around that. And so that person who can tap dance with the media that's a difficult thing to find. Someone who's going to resonate as real and authentic in the rural areas of this seat. It's a massive seat, goes all the way to South Australia, right? So it goes from Albury to South Australia. That's how big this place is. Albury's by far the biggest urban centre So this person has to have authenticity for the farming and rural communities and has to have cut through and slickness for the urban centre, particularly the urban centre of Albury, in order to combat Michelle Milthorpe, who's got a lot of local support here in Albury especially. This is a little bit of a unicorn that we're looking for. I sincerely believe there will be someone in there. My name's not in the mix, by the way. I know lots of people are wondering. I've not put my name forward. My hope is, and I think the best thing for all of us is to find another amazing person who's going to run as the candidate so that I can keep doing what I do. I can keep on supporting, making content, decoding and demystifying all of this stuff, and then carry on doing what I do with, some amazing person in Parliament from this seat following the election. That I think is the outcome that we should all be hoping for. I didn't meet that person today.
Can you just do me a quick favor and just flash a boob or something? Because Duncan the Crusader says we're currently competing with maths. Oh God, he did it. He did
it. Sorry. Was that not enough? I was just adjusting my chair, Carly. I don't know what you're carrying on about. Get your mind out of the gutter.
Duncan, be careful what you ask for.
Get your woman under control, all right? She's hysterical. She's hysterical, okay? Go and fix her.
Do you know, here's a bit of trivia for you. When they used to call women hysterical, it's because they were orgasming.
Yes, no, that's right.
Yeah, do you know?
Yeah. And junior doctors hated doing it. Junior doctors would be given the job of literally rubbing the hysteria out of hysterical women. High-class men would pay for their wives to be taken to clinics where young, fresh out of medical school doctors, young male, presumably more attractive than they are, would be responsible for helping them with their hysteria. Yes, I'm not making this up. This is absolutely true. The past is a foreign country, I tell you.
Guys, don't tell us that you don't learn things on this podcast. My God.
Whether you wanted to know those things is another matter altogether.
Yeah. Okay. So, anything else you want to say about the whole by-election? Because I've got a lot of things lined up for us.
Look, not much more than that, except to say there is a lot of interest on the One Nation side of things. There are a lot of people putting their name forward as candidates. There is a process that the party is going to follow. My understanding is the party is going to vet people. They will approve a number. I don't know what that number will be. I assume it'll be a small number of people where they've kind of met them. They're happy with how they perform in front of the camera. They've got a good grasp of the policies. They don't have skeletons in the closet that are going to destroy the campaign. And then having vetted those people, they'll be put to the branch members, the local Farah One Nation branch members. And we've been assured by the One Nation leadership that it will be a vote among the members, not a captain's pick by Pauline.
Yeah. One thing that I worry about too, and look, I don't know how many people would be this invested in it, but you got to be careful the wrong people don't infiltrate. Obviously, there's a big upswing towards One Nation at the moment. They need to be really careful this person hasn't been aligned with the NSN, because once that's out, again, it comes down to brand. This will be terrible for the One Nation brand moving forward.
Correct.
So there's a lot of pressure on them to get this next candidate right. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and they have to. You're dead right. All of this momentum, 30 years of work and sacrifice from Pauline and the other people that have been with her since the beginning, and many others for part of that journey, they've finally got traction. If they make a mistake with this person, that traction can evaporate very quickly, especially with Angus. I don't think Angus is any better than Susan Ley. I think he's a swamp creature. He's been there 15 years. He was instrumental in the Dutton campaign, and we all saw how successful that was. He sang from the songbook for ages on all kinds of issues that they're now trying to turn their back on. I believe, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong about this, but I believe that he voted in support of the 2024 hate laws, and he voted in support of the 2026, which the 24 hate laws were voted on in 2025. And then he supported the most recent hate group laws. So he's been on the wrong side of issue after issue. The possible exception might be net zero, but I'm not even sure about that. All right. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, he's a part of the reason why the Liberals have collapsed to the level that they have. But He is a much better person in front of a camera and in the media, and he understands the game that he's playing, I think, a lot better than Susan did. So he is going to claw back some support. Some of the people that were wavering, they're kind of in the middle, some of those will come back to the Liberals because of Angus. This is by no means a done deal.
Yeah, Susan Ley was deeply unlikable. There is nothing about her that made me want to take her seriously. The issue with the Liberals, I mean, we've talked about this at length, is they've gone so far from, you know, what Robert Menzies, you know, the founding sorry, what am I trying to say? The founding speech of Robert Menzies, that's what I was trying to say.
The We Believe statement, all of that, yeah.
They're so far from that. And I think that whoever is advising them behind the scenes is telling them that you need to somewhat align with Labor's messaging and be delicate. So G showed me before, Angus was on 2GB. Can't remember who he was talking to, but you know, he had people calling in.
People were calling in, yeah.
And he tanked, apparently. This is just this is secondhand. I didn't listen to it. And G was saying that he couldn't answer a straight question.
So I began listening to it, and I ran out of time. I had to run off to this meeting. I did not think that his performance was anywhere near as bad as the caption made it sound.
Okay. I didn't listen to it, to be fair.
To be clear, I got maybe 2 minutes in. I think it was about 15 minutes long. So there might be a train wreck later on in the interview. But the bit that I saw was consistent with the Angus Taylor that I've seen over the last 10 years that I've been paying attention, which is a pretty comfortable performer. He wasn't saying what people wanted him to say, but for the 2 minutes that I listened to, he was doing a good job of making his case. So I would have to listen to the rest to know whether that was just clickbait.
Yeah, look, I've got to be honest, like, even though that we do this podcast twice a week, I'm just so uninterested in the Liberal Party, like the constant backstabbing, you know, the rolling of people, whatever, until they come out with some policies that actually will change the course of the way this country is heading. I couldn't be less interested. At the moment, Liberal Labor, they seem to be the same thing at this point. One Nation. Sorry.
Let me give you an example. So they took all their policies down off their website. That's pretty normal when there's a change of leader, to give the new leader some oxygen, some time to roll out what the new policies are, especially now because they know they have to change their policies. Angus has come out and said they're going to dramatically slash immigration. Now, he said we're currently taking people in at 500,000 a year. And he said, I'm not going to give you a number. He was pressed on what's the number going to be. I'm not going to do that, but I'll tell you how we're going to figure the number out. And it's going to be based on infrastructure and houses and blah, blah, blah. And I go, well, that's a clever political answer, but that's a deeply unsatisfactory answer. So I can understand why some people would look at that and go, oh, he's tanking. He can't even give an answer to a straight question. Well, I think he's failed to adapt to the new political realities, but his answer wasn't actually bad. It's just unsatisfying for the moment that he's in. Now, that's arguably poor politics on his part. Yeah,
it's political speak.
Yeah, and people are tired of it, and this is what the Liberal Party haven't figured out yet: is the old tricks don't work on the new electorate. I think if we sit here and tell ourselves that he's going to tank, we're going to be unpleasantly surprised. I think we have to tell ourselves that he is going to put up a much better fight, and on that basis, if we believe that One Nation is at least a step in the right direction, I'm still a Libertarian. I will still be voting number one for the Libertarian Party if they run a candidate in this electorate, right? But the winds of history, the winds of fate are not at the back of the One Nation, of the Libertarian Party right now. They are at the back of the One Nation Party. So the Libertarians, I'm sorry, they could run the most wonderful candidate. I'm sorry, they're not going to win. They don't have the cut through. People don't know they exist. So I have to deal with the reality. The reality is either we're getting Michelle Milthorpe, who is a Climate 200 backed independent, who did very well at the last federal election, or we're getting a national, which is more of the same, or we're getting One Nation. Realistically, those are the three that we're choosing from. And so I'm going all in to try and help One Nation get it between now and that election.
Yeah, look, I hope One Nation get up. I more so, like, it's not that I agree with One Nation 100% either. I mean, I think most people sort of take a few from this column and a few from that column. I'm a libertarian, but there's definitely some things, I guess, because I'm more personally invested in them, that I lean a bit more conservative on and whatnot. But I think any extra competition into this political arena 100%. Of Australia is important. 100%. You know, I mean, it has been so heavily skewed to the left because of the Greens and Labor. You know, having One Nation in the mix just to keep the coalition on their toes and also keep Labor and the Greens more accountable. I think the more in there, the better. I say that because a lot of people vote on one policy. They'll pick one thing. They'll be like, oh, immigration's my thing. I'm voting for this party for that. You know,
Yeah.
I think the more people in the mix, the harder it is to get legislation passed, the better for this country.
Yeah. So I want to finish. I cut myself off halfway through a point earlier and then didn't finish it. So I want to I'm going to circle back.
Oh.
So the Liberal Party took all their policies down. That's normal. They'll put policies up. The One Nation Party get accused of being a protest party. They get accused of being a do-nothing party. They never put forward legislation. They never this, they never that. They have the most comprehensive set of published policies of any of the parties that cover the full spectrum. They're not, you know, you've got parties like the Cannabis Party that have policies on one thing and then they're silent on the rest. One Nation's not like that. One Nation have policies on an enormous spread of issues, all the ones that matter. They've got covered with policies. They're public on the website. You can go and read them. And here's the thing. Those policies have not changed in their substance for 30 years. They've changed in the details. They've moved with the times and the specifics, but the substance of them is the same and has been for a very, very long time. So they are actually one of the most substantial parties, in my opinion. Now, I want to just touch on this and then we can move on from all this talk. So Arthur's Fenchurch has said, Barnaby would be another reason to not vote One Nation. He's already proven he has no loyalty. I think you're interpreting Barnaby's defection away from the Nationals exactly wrong. Barnaby is actually doing his best to stay where he is as the party moves around him. And he's tolerated a party that left his values some time ago, and he's tried to drag them back to his values unsuccessfully. And finally, he's gone, well, either I abandon my values and move with the party, or I stand on my values and find a new home that accepts my values. And that's what he's done. Yeah. I think to interpret his shift as disloyalty is looking at it the wrong way.
Let's read some of these super chats. So Riot, welcome back, Riot. I'm not going to tell the story on air, but Riot unfortunately had to take some time away from the Oddie. He's an OG Oddie, so we're very grateful to have him back.
Good to see you, Riot.
Just to put One Nation second marbles in your court. Yeah, if you guys want to watch more Topher Field, go to his YouTube channel and watch today's marble video. It kind of explains it a bit. But it's anyone's game at this point. It really depends on the candidate that One Nation put forward.
100%. And it needs to be, we've covered that. It needs to be a really, really high caliber person.
All right. I'm going to read a couple more super chats just because we've missed quite a few. Baz the Dark Horse. No one cares about gender other than Karens. Are you attacking me or are you agreeing with me?
No. Let's not go back to that. We did that to death for 20 minutes.
Okay. Pro Engineer. It's not so much a question of personality as it is messaging. You can kick later the curb and still present a woman-friendly party. I totally agree. Totally agree with you.
And this is the challenge is that the media will reinforce because Julia Gillard created this woman problem narrative around the Liberals. The media will buy back into that, and it's just a lose-lose situation. Yeah,
that was my point. Not that I felt that way. That from a brand point of view, it doesn't look good. So anyway,
sure.
I'm not going to read that same thing.
It had to be done.
I have an old video on my channel called Crazy Firearms Legislation, which is very relevant now that we are discussing gun limits. Hunt and Fishing Mike, feel free to put your YouTube channel in the comments. We'll tell people to go check it out.
Well, I'm assuming that is his YouTube channel because he's commenting on YouTube.
Well, yeah, maybe just to reiterate. Good point. Okay, got to give your flack to Topher. I think you underestimate non-union workers. We're not beholden to commie ideals. What say you to that?
So, well, I think what he's reflecting on is that a lot of workers are not beholden to the unions, therefore not beholden to the Labor Party, and are going and supporting One Nation. We see that in the polls, and I actually talked about that in my video that I released today. Working class, rural Australians, 40% in favour of One Nation. Working class Australians, it's in the high 30s%, or might be mid 30s%, in support of One Nation, and a lot of that's coming away from Labor. Small business owners, etc., traditionally Liberal, they are also moving towards One Nation. We're seeing this migration happen pretty much across the board. But certainly, I mean, look, my view on unions has been public for a long time. I have no issue with voluntary association, including voluntarily grouping together for more bargaining power in pay negotiations. I've got no issue with the existence of unions. I've never been a member. That's not true. I was forced to become a member of the MEAA, the Media and Entertainment Arts Alliance, in order to do some acting work that I did back in the day. But that was literally a protection racket. You couldn't do the work unless you were a member. I've never voluntarily joined any union, and I was under a lot of pressure to do so at a previous job where I was a forklift driver. But I don't actually ideologically have an issue with unions as long as they remain voluntary. But yes, I'm well aware a lot of workers are not unionized. And a lot of workers, and, amongst the crappy workers that I worked with, there were some people that had an amazing work ethic and got stuck in every single day to do a good job, understanding that the business had to make money in order to pay their salaries. There's a lot of good people everywhere, and a lot of the good workers are heading over to One Nation at the moment.
I'm just reading some of the comments in the chat, people talking about unions. So last week on the podcast, I think I said to you, I can't remember if I said it on the podcast or I said it before we started recording, I was hesitant to say that the CFMEU situation in Victoria would have a big impact. And I've been pleasantly surprised. Like, I'm eating my words on that. So it has actually caused quite a massive stir in Victoria. And I think it's making national news. It can't not at this point of view, at this point in time. And interestingly, speaking about people coming out and doubling down, Jacinta has done anything but try and talk about it. So she keeps talking about the schools that they're opening and the new things that they're doing. And I think it's just honestly spitting in the face of the public. And I've really noticed the sentiment shift. Not saying that they're all going to start voting Liberal or One Nation. No. More so, the disgust with the Labor Party in Victoria is, I want to think it can get worse, but it is shocking to me how this seems to be the thing that's rattled people. And then further to that, we've voted for the voice in Victoria. We now have a voice to the parliament, and it's come out that they're all going to be on very cushy salaries. I think it was $197,000 for 30 people, all whilst the teachers, the paramedics, the CFA have been begging for cash, and we've been told that the state's broke.
And they don't even have to work full time. They don't even have to work full time.
So, and just as hard as I went on the Liberal Party, the Labor Party are fucked from a brand perspective. This whole CFMEU thing, I actually think this will be the thing that finally brings them down. I mean, there's so many other things that we could get them for, but this seems to have really, really stung people the wrong way. Because the other thing is too, now in Victoria, I don't know what happened with the rest of the states, but in Victoria, we all pay a COVID tax now in a form of land tax and other things. And everyone knows that our debt is, what was it? It's like almost $1 million. It's multiple millions of dollars a day. I can't remember. I haven't looked at it for a while.
Yeah, I don't know Victoria specific anymore.
Yeah, the numbers, once they get so big, I'm just like, so abstract.
Hard to comprehend.
What does it even mean? And it gets to a point where, the average Australian, I think, whether you're upper middle class, you're wealthy, or, you're lower middle class, or you're struggling financially, everyone's overheads have increased. Everyone's feeling it. Yes, okay, I know there's differences between feeling uncomfortable in a big house, so don't come for me over that. What I'm saying is it's impacted everyone across the board. So everyone's pissed off. Yeah. It's not like, you've made this section of the market really uncomfortable, but everyone else is doing well. We were all promised lower utilities. We're all promised more extra bits and pieces. And I think what I'm seeing in Australia, and I think it's too early to call this, but what I'm seeing is everyone has had a gutful of the way these politicians speak to us like we're idiots. Like, they'll get up and do their, carefully curated PR speak, and they'll talk things and like, we're doing amazing things for schools. Like, giving politicians social media is honestly the worst thing. Just seeing
no, it's the best thing.
It's the best and the worst.
Yeah.
It makes me cringe. Like, every time I see Jacinta Allen's face and she's like trying to act, I'm like, oh, anyway. Okay. I think people have gotten to a point where the reason I think a big part of Pauline doing so well is because she's so real. No, she's not polished.
100%.
But 100%. She's real. She's not giving you this PR spin.
So we've talked about this before, and I hadn't really applied it to politics as much as I probably should have, given that I'm a political commentator. We've talked about the authenticity side of things and how authenticity is currency today. We went
Yeah.
through a phase on Instagram where it was all about the super polished pictures. And, influencers would spend all day to get 2 photographs that they would put up. And then we went through the phase where they were getting mocked and other people would take photographs of an influencer trying to do the blah, blah, blah. We went through, you get this bloke with a dad bod doing all the bikini pictures of the influencers and mocking them, right? And I think that's a really healthy thing. I think it's one of the reasons I love free speech. Let people tease and mock and laugh at anything that they see fit, really. And what we've had is this, we went through the phase where we were in love with the fake. And now we've gone, but that's not real. And we know it's not real. And we're not satisfied anymore pretending that it's real. That illusion is worn off. Just give me something real. And with someone like Pauline, you do not have to agree with her. And I disagree with her on a couple of key points. I agree with a lot of what she's got to say, but I disagree on a couple of key points. But I know that she believes absolutely everything she says. There's no guile. There's no messaging. There's no, oh, I'll say that this way to this audience and I'll say it that way. No, she just says what she believes is true. You can decide whether she's right, but you know that she's telling you what she believes to be true. And that holds a lot of currency right now, especially with younger people. And we're seeing that in the voting patterns.
100%. And just to take away from politics for a second, I see this purely from a brand and messaging point of view. Obviously a big part of my job is paying attention to trends and where things are shifting. Authenticity keeps being bandied about because people are trying to manufacture it. Oh, I look authentic if I do this. If my hair's a bit messy, but my makeup's still perfect, I can still put that Instagram photo up. And it's not about that anymore. There's a new trend on socials called Yap content. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so Yap content is essentially what you and I are doing now. It's just got a new name for Instagram. But it's where people are having a messy chat to their audience and they're posting that messy chat. So it's not scripted. Sure. It's not them trying to be anything other than, I just wanted to talk to you about this thing. And it's done in a way that's sort of this could be a conversation you and I are having at a coffee in a cafe. Having a coffee in a cafe or over the dinner table or something. They're little moments that we see behind the curtain and it makes you realize, oh, yeah, that person's human. We don't get that with a lot of our leaders. And when they try and do it, it just comes off so naff and just, ugh.
Yeah, because these are not genuinely charismatic people. These aren't people that you would usually like if you just had them over for a barbecue in your backyard.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big part of what Topher and I have been trying to do with the Oddcast too, guys. This isn't scripted. We go off the rails all the time because I think could we sit here and do things more professionally? Of course we could. We could come to the podcast with a script and everything.
Yeah.
But we already have that, and we've had that for years. I think what you need is this would. I mean, we've said it to you guys a billion times, but this is kind of the conversation that you have over dinner when you're at the dinner table. And you're like, oh no, I saw this thing. No, I don't disagree with that. It's a bit scrappy. And I think that's where everyone's at. It's you just want someone to say the thing that you're thinking, even though it doesn't come out necessarily right.
We've got a couple of super chats we need to get to. While I do that, you sent it to me. You sent me an absolutely amazing piece of social media content from a Victorian MP earlier in the week.
Here. I have 20,000 tabs open.
All right. Well, if you could find that, because I think that's really worth sharing, because that's an example of social media done right. That's the kind of thing we want our politicians doing. You've frozen, by the way. But
that happens when I'm on a different tab. Sorry.
Is that what happens? Okay. So Riot has actually shared a little bit of his story. For those wondering, I wasn't in prison. I was king hit on New Year's by somebody on bail. Not Vic, was from New South Wales. Coma for a week. Month in hospital. All good. Now I've had my top surgery. Not sure what the top surgery is referring to. If that's a joke or if that's a thing, but.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to bring this up because I wanted Riot's permission. So he just did. So this is a wonderful thing I love about the Oddies. Obviously, most of you guys are in Discord. If you're not in Discord, the link's in all the videos. You can jump in. If you want to be in all the members' chats, you have to be an OG Oddie, and you can sign up for that with Kofi over there. Am I pointing in the right direction?
And this is the last week to do it because our first birthday party is coming up. And then you will never be able to be an OG ever again.
So with Riot, he's quite active in the Oddie community, and then he just disappeared, and no one knew where he was. And I saw
brutal.
Yeah, and everyone was in the chat looking, does anyone know where he is? No one's seen him, no one's talked to him. And obviously we don't know each other personally. We just know each other all in an online capacity. And quite a few of the Oddies had heard of a story in Queensland. A man was assaulted on New Year's Eve, and it turned out to be Riot. So we're very happy that he's back.
Well, Riot, we are thrilled that you didn't ghost us literally. King hits, I'm sure you know, can be fatal. So really, really glad to have you back, mate. That's a horrific thing to go through, and I hope whatever lingering effects there may be, I hope that that's manageable for you and you can get on with life. Yeah,
so Riot only came back, I think, 2 weeks ago. We didn't know where he was for like 6 weeks. So
yeah, wow. Mate, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
Discord link has expired. Again, I'll send a new one.
Okay, so I want to get to this super chat here before we get to that piece of content. Yeah. So Sotzeo is asking, at what point do we stop decline paying taxes? By the way. Yeah, thank you. Do we stop or decline paying taxes where possible? It's a crime what they are wasting it on. We should be driving on gold roads, yes, for the amount that we pay. This is a really tricky one. And I get literally every week or so, I would get multiple different people wanting to message me in Facebook or send me emails. And they'll say, if we all stop paying taxes, it'll be over in a week. Okay, I'm sorry, but if your plan starts with the words, if everybody, or if we all, it's not a plan. It's not going to happen. So I completely agree with your sentiment. Making this happen in a way where enough people actually do it simultaneously that they can't just get picked off and taken out by lawfare. Because there are people that try. There are people that do this, and there are people that will have various techniques that they'll use in court. They might try and use other financial instruments or other things like that. I know a lot of these people personally, and their results are very, very scattered. Some people seem to be able to, make it work and, haven't paid taxes in ages and they're not in prison, and, and other people end up in prison or losing their house. The cops just come and kick them out of their house, etc. And, we could argue about, well, these people did it right and those people did it wrong. Or I could argue that this person got that judge and that person got that judge. In the end, the approach I've had to take, because I know people that play these games all the time, and I look at them and I look at the amount of time they have invested and the amount of anxiety that they live with as a result of having taken the approach that they've taken. They drive without driver's licenses and without registration and everything else. And okay, sure, I get where they're coming from. I've heard all the arguments, but they have to live with a level of anxiety and a level of awareness and know that every time they drive, they might end up getting held up for a very, very long time because yet another new cop who they've never interacted with before pulls them over and they have to go through all the rigmarole again. And half the time they end up down at the cop shop anyway. And I sit there and I go, if I lived in Sicily in the 18 or 1900s and I was in a mafia town, I would pay the protection money. Right? You understand this? It would be unjust. And the way they use that money is unjust. And they have no lawful right to extract it from me, but I would pay the protection money. Now, I'd probably try and move and get out of that area and go somewhere that isn't owned by the mafia. But my approach is, we live in a mafia town. And it so happens that we live in a mafia town where we get to have a say in the mafia leadership. And if we can get on our bike, if your plan starts with an if everybody, which is not literally what you've done here, Sotzeo, but if your plan requires strength in numbers, then you can win in politics. You can change the leadership and you can change the rules by which the mafia operate. And if you don't have the numbers, then a strategy of stopping paying taxes, unfortunately, you're painting a very, very big target on your back. I want one last thing on this, because I think it's worth exploring. Too often people who are, and this is something I've had to really wrestle with within myself, people who have a high sense of justice or injustice and they want to see the world made right. We can go all in on a fight that isn't worth going all in on. So someone takes on the banks. My parents took on the banks. Okay. They lost their house. I'm paying for the house that they're living in right now to this day, right? They lost their house 20 years ago. Because they took on the banks, and it was a righteous fight over this. And I know so many other people have taken on so many righteous fights. And the thing you have to realize is that whether you're fighting a big corporation or whether you're fighting the government and bureaucrats, they get paid to fight you. and they have an unlimited amount of resources at their disposal and an unlimited amount of time. For you, if you choose to pick one of these sorts of fights, this is an existential fight that keeps you awake at night. No bureaucrat is lying awake at night worried about how they're going to collect taxes from you. But you're lying awake at night worried about the sheriff showing up because of your unpaid taxes. It's completely asymmetrical. And as much as a David and Goliath story, and I believe the David and Goliath account in the Bible to be literally true, it happens from time to time, and we see David win. Most of the time, that's not how it ends. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying be really, really careful about picking an all-in fight because your opponent is not all in. I would strongly recommend, if you want to pick fights, if you want to develop that muscle and learn those strategies and dabble in those sorts of things, make sure you're doing it on a not all-in fight. Make sure you're doing it on something where you can lose and be okay, because the people you're up against literally get paid to do this all day long. And if it takes 10 years and they've left and moved on to another job and another person's come in and they've left and another person's come in and your case has been handed over from person to person, it is no skin off their nose. But for that whole time, that's your life. So yeah, it's a great question. Be really careful with that line of thinking.
The best advice I ever got in business was lawyers buy Lamborghinis with principle, meaning that people go,
other people's principles.
With other people's principles. It's like, oh, no, it's the principle of it. It's like lawyers love hearing that.
Yeah.
I need to fight him. It's the principle. It's like, yes, you just bought another Lamborghini for a lawyer. Yeah, I agree with you. I see a lot of this too. Can I play you something? I wasn't actually going to play this. I haven't played you guys one of my reels for a while. But
sure.
I think since the Epstein files, which we're not going to talk about, we've already talked about it at length, but there was a lot of content going out, and you guys would see this as well. There's a lot of people who are just screaming at the moment going, oh, like, look at this thing. It's terrible. And it's fluffing everyone's feathers. But no one's presenting any real opportunity. And I fear what's happening here is it's leaving people comatose. It's giving them paralysis. They're literally going, oh my God, everything's fucked. We can't change anything. And I definitely see a little bit of that in our chats as well. Like, I think, it just feels really heavy. You think, oh, there's nothing I can do. It's all rigged. They're selected, not elected, all this nonsense. I put together a little reel just to combat this because I'm a history nerd, as you know. And I fear that, like, the bits of history that everyone know are the big battles or the big moments. But very few people recognize why the Berlin Wall fell, why the Soviet Union fell, why Rome fell. It wasn't because of one big, massive thing. So I'm just going to play you this reel. I just feel like it's worth just keeping this in your mind. So let me bring it up. I'll restart it. 1 second. Hang on. That's
a programming tool and weapon. They're not predicting anything. They're programming you for the future.
Look, he's not wrong, but if I may, there's always something missing in this kind of.
Sorry, I missed the start of that. I didn't quite catch the context for it.
It ends in the same place. Paralysis. So basically, this guy, Clown Repellent, he's one of the people who's putting up a lot of more conservative-leaning content, and he put out a video talking about the Epstein files, just basically saying, like his followers were asking him why he's not talking about it. So he went on a rant saying, like, the reason I'm not talking about it is because everything's fucked, everything's this, and he listed all of the things that we would have talked about at some point in the Oddcast, and basically just gave a shit sandwich of like, this is how fucked the world is. Right, and that was it. That was the content. So yeah. So now that you've got that content,
I'm happy for you to restart it. I just missed that.
Yeah. Okay. So let me.
Programming tool and weapon. They're not predicting anything. They're programming you for the future.
Look, he's not wrong, but if I may, there's always something missing in this kind of black pill content. So let's talk about it. This genre of content always ends in the same place, paralysis, and you walk away feeling small, trapped, and doomed, like history is happening to you and you're just a spectator. Arnold Toynbee, one of the most respected historians of the 20th century, studied the rise and fall of over 20 civilizations, and his conclusion wasn't that they were crushed by secret cabals. His conclusion was simple. Civilizations die from suicide, not murder. Rome didn't fall in a day. It it was hollowed out with economic decay, corruption, overreach, and most importantly, a loss of a shared belief in the project itself. The Soviet Union didn't explode in a world-ending war. It dissolved when its own citizens stopped pretending that the story worked. Even modern political theorists talk about this in terms of legitimacy. Once a population withdraws its psychological consent, power structures become fragile overnight. Philosopher Hannah Arendt warned about this exact phenomenon when she wrote, "The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist, but for the people whom the distinction between fact and fiction no longer exists." So it's not about one evil ideology, it's about the danger of citizens giving up their agency and retreating into despair. The internet feeds you fear because fear is profitable and fear keeps you scrolling. But serious history is not the story of unstoppable elites. It's the story of ordinary people deciding slowly and quietly that they're not going to cooperate with the decay anymore. We can't fix a civilization by discovering secret documents. We can fix it by strengthening the things that systemic rot cannot survive around: our families, communities, culture, local trust, and more importantly, your personal character. No, it's not glamorous and it's not the Hollywood James Bond ending we all crave. And because it's not sexy, it doesn't go viral. But this is where every shift in history actually begins. History is not shaped by the people at the top nearly as much as it's shaped by the character of the people underneath them. Every corrupt system in history believed that the population was too distracted, too indulgent, and too demoralized to ever demand better. And every system that collapsed discovered that it had misunderstood the human spirit. So Jeremy is right. Obsessing over corruption and evil you cannot control makes you powerless. But strengthening the parts of your life you can control makes you historically dangerous in the best possible way. Civilizations do not die because evil men exist. Evil men have existed in every century. You cannot single-handedly fix global corruption, but you can refuse decay in your own life. You can raise your standards. We have been trained to believe that power only lives in governments, corporations, and secret rooms. And that is a comforting lie because it excuses us from responsibility. Power lives wherever human beings decide to take themselves seriously. And every major turning point in history has come from a critical mass of ordinary people deciding they are no longer willing to live beneath their own standards. And if enough people decide to live like that, history does not repeat its worst chapters, it simply writes new ones.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think so much of what you've touched on is really at the heart of my work, at the heart of your work. It's the reason why I sort of, when we talked about doing a podcast, I was like, yes, I think we're the right people to do one together because we are both very much united on a couple of key themes that you touched on. Individual agency matters. Not getting so buried in the black pill, not getting so deep into all of the big stuff that just sits on top of you and pins you to the ground. You can't do a damn thing. Get out of bed, take responsibility for the things that you can change and do your best in those things. It's what my masterclass is all about. It's what so much of your work is all about. It's what we lived during COVID. Couldn't fix the world, but even just showing up to protests, I so quickly realized that those protests were so important. Not because they were going to change the government overnight, and arguably because Daniel Andrews won the next election, there are naysayers who say, "Oh, we didn't change anything." Okay, well, fine, you can have that point of view. But I saw people come to their first protest and their face light up, and I saw people in tears, and I'd go over to them. You can go, if you want to bore yourself to tears, go back to my old live streams, and I'll go up to people, and hey, you okay? What's going on? And 50% of the time, it was someone who had just come to their first protest, and the emotional release of realizing that they were not alone and of feeling like they had taken some amount of control back was phenomenal. In my case, I've told the story before, but I'll tell it briefly again here. I knew I was going to get arrested. I was in a pretty bad place mentally at that point, and it got a lot worse in the years that followed. But by mid 2021, I was in a pretty bad place. I was snowed under by all of the messages, the despair, the emails, and so forth that I was getting from people just at the end of their rope. I was expecting to be arrested. I was deeply into the alcoholism at that point in time. And so I would sit up in the garage replying to people's messages and drinking until 2 or 3 in the morning. Then I would go into bed. And then the minute there was a car noise on the street at 5:30, the first tradie getting in their car to go to work because they're an essential worker, I would wake up because I was expecting the police to come and kick my door down literally any day. And so eventually I went and I talked to my wife and I said, look, I'm going to go crazy here and I don't know what to do. And what she said to me proved to be really, really insightful. The way it worked in our particular case was she said to me, you haven't done what you promised. And I was kind of offended. I'm like, oh, no, hang on, I keep my promises. Like, what do you mean? And she reminded me the day I proposed to her, before I proposed, I said, listen, you need to know something. I genuinely expect that I will go to prison for my work someday. And that wasn't me trying to be a hero or trying to impress her. I know who I am, and I can see the way the world is turning. And I genuinely believe that I'm going to choose to not shut up at a time when the government's willing to throw me in prison for not shutting up. That's obvious. And so I said that to her, and her reply to me at that moment on the day I proposed, which by the way was a Valentine's Day, so it was 12 years ago. She said to me, just make sure I know who to call when that happens. And she reminded me in that moment, she said, I don't know what to do. If you get arrested, I don't know what to do. And so I sat down and I wrote a 4-page document. It was an actions on document, actions on my arrest, actions on my injury, actions on my death, actions on my disappearance. Here are the people you need to call. Here are their phone numbers. And here is a 1-sentence description of the reason you need to call that person. What is the outcome you need from that conversation? Why are you calling them? And in this order. And she printed off about 5 different copies and hid them in different parts of the house, emailed them to a couple of other key people so that there would be digital or physical copies available to her pretty much no matter what. And that night I slept. I really actually slept. And that was a real watershed moment for me. And it wasn't that my circumstances had changed. It wasn't that I was no longer expecting to be arrested, probably violently, possibly getting injured, who knows. The stuff Victoria Police had done to others was horrific. They were literally breaking people's limbs on purpose in the process of arresting them, popping people's shoulders out of joint. All kinds of horrible stuff. None of that changed. But for me, my world changed because I had the belief that my wife knew what to do and that she and the kids would be okay. And that's an example of how we can take agency over our part, no matter how bad things are around us. And that was such a seminal moment for me. And it really feeds into so much of what I cover in the masterclass, etc., is taking control over the controllables.
Yeah.
It won't change your circumstances, but it will radically shift your relationship to your circumstances. And I so hate this black pill stuff. This stuff that leaves people feeling helpless. You are never helpless. You always have agency over how you choose to live within those circumstances.
Yeah, there's a lot of it going around at the moment, and that's what I'm trying to get across in the Oddcast. Like, I know I'm not perfect, and I know I'm not necessarily the right person for a lot of people. A lot of people seem to not like the way I present things, and that is what it is. But it's more so like there's a really easy way to be streamers and to do YouTube well. And Topher and I are kind of doing it the hardest possible way, which is just like being authentic and not like playing into the fear. And my worry with this stuff is my worry with this is that it's working really well. And I'm not trying to come for these black pillars either. They all have significantly larger platforms than you and I both. Like these people are growing big. But I don't find it helpful. And whenever I present, like I try and be the devil's advocate for a couple of things, because I think you get really complacent when you're arguing with people who agree with you, or like when you're having these conversations around like-minded people. And unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, and we have to find some kind of commonality. And the whole focus of my work moving forward, and I know it's your focus too, is I think people feel way more disempowered than they are. You're not disempowered. Every single one of you, like, no, we can't change the government today. And I know it feels like it's really difficult, but there are actually things that we can do. And that's what we're trying to get across in this podcast. But yeah, I just thought it was worth bringing that up, because when I show you some stuff that we're going to go through, just always keep that in the back of your mind. And also sense of humor helps a lot. But
all right, well, we started an hour late, so if you've got a bunch of stuff for us to get through, we better start getting through it.
Yeah, all right. So first one is Nicole Werner's post. So I sent this to Topher last week. Apologies, I freeze when I'm cutting between windows. I don't know why. That's a new thing from StreamYard. So if you see me like, I'm not having a stroke. It's just
it's just because the wind changed and she's stuck like that forever.
So this is Nicole Werner's post. So she is a Victorian MP. This is her first term, and I actually am genuinely excited by Nicole. Obviously, she's got a team working with her, and they're making sensational social media, and it's really landing. And this is, again, I talk about brand a lot because, you know, for those of us who read the headlines and read the articles, you know, we can get in the weeds about all this stuff. Your average person is not. They don't know half the stuff that we know. So when I see things like this, I'm like, this is the most amazing infographic. So I'll probably freeze as I start to show it to you guys. But so
we can
it's
still
like,
hear you, just so you know. Your image freezes, but we can still hear you.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. All right. So this is basically talking about the CFMEU scandal. So she's got, for those who are listening to the podcast, I'll just read it out quickly. How much money did the Victorian government give to criminals, that being the bikies and the corrupt CFMEU? And it's estimated, very conservatively, that it's over $15 billion to organised crime and corruption through Labor's big build. And so what she's got here is just some stats for you, and it's a big bar graph. So at the top of the bar graph is medium income, the average person, $55,000 per annum. Then it's like a teacher starter pay, $78K per annum. The top 1% of Australians get paid somewhere around a ballpark of $375,000 per annum on average. And then the median house price in Melbourne is $1.1 million.
And I just want to paint a picture here again for people who are listening. At this point, we've had those four categories, the top one being at 1.1 million, and you still cannot see any red on the bar graph. It looks like there's nothing there. Just to give you an idea of the scale of what we're going to get to later on, at $1.1 million, there are still 0 pixels of red.
And then the next one, I'm actually not familiar with this. Fix 5 ways. I'm not sure what that is. $25 million.
That'd be an intersection somewhere, yeah.
Okay. A new primary school cost $40 million, which, just by the way, that seems really high. I don't know. I could be out of touch. It just seems like a lot, given how basic primary schools are. Anyway, 500 new police officers. Also another number that I just don't quite understand. I'm not good with corrupt economics, but $58 million for just 500 new police officers.
Well, that I assume would be their salary for the year as they go through the academy and everything else. That's, you know, $100,000 including their training costs. That's actually pretty reasonable.
Is it? Okay. Could be wrong.
I think so.
Build 500 new homes for $185 million. And then government funding for the CFA, which this has been a big contentious point, $361 million. So just for those who are following along on the podcast, this is now only just registering on this bar graph. And then on the next one, we have a brand new hospital. So if I scroll across, that is estimated to be $1.5 billion. And then finally at the bottom, we have the big build corruption. So for those who can see the graph, you've got 250 million, 500 million, 750 million, and it goes up in increments. So if the new hospital costs 1.5 billion, we have to keep scrolling. No.
So we're on the third screen? Fourth?
We're on the fourth screen. The total Victorian police budget for 25-26 is 4.5 billion. We've got to keep scrolling.
Fifth screen?
It says we're not even halfway there.
Sixth
Next
screen.
One. The top of the range 2026 4x4 Hilux Rogue costs $71,990,000. If you had this much money, you could buy 115,000 of them. That's enough to give a brand new ute to every carpenter, plumber, and electrician across Victoria.
Now, I love this. No, pause. I love this because that's a dig at the CFMEU, because when John Setka got the pay deal that he got for the last one that he got for the CFMEU, his comment to the media was there won't be enough Ford Rangers in the country.
Yes,
right.
Correct.
For all the tradies who are going to be buying up. So that's a dig at the CFMEU.
Keep going. We're now on the 7th page, and it says, "Don't get tired yet." We keep scrolling.
8th.
The estimated cost of a train line to the Melbourne airport is $11.5 billion, and we're still scrolling.
9th.
We're almost there. If you made $1 million a day and never spent a dollar, you would have to work for 52 months to save the amount shown on this page. And we keep scrolling. And then finally, we arrive at 15 billion. According to the Watson report into the CFMEU corruption, this is the estimated amount funneled to corruption and criminal activity on the Victorian big build sites. Taxpayer money allegedly funded strippers, drug deals, and crime syndicates. And the Allen Labor government knew and looked the other way.
Yep. Yep.
That's honestly one of the best pieces of social content I've ever seen from an MP.
I lost track of how many screens there were, but and that was made for Instagram, where you're just swiping across. Such a brilliant use of social media in politics. It's honestly, it's one of the best I've seen.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's why I said before, I think the CFMEU scandal is, what are you doing? Is it now a fondue cigar?
It's a thing called a perfect draw. It's a cigar smoker's tool. No, not that kind of tool. Get your mind out of the gutter. And you use it it serves multiple purposes. If you get a plugged cigar, you can clear it. And you can also spike your cigars, and you don't burn your fingers.
There's a level of wankery that goes along with this that I just was unprecedented to me.
So cigar smoking is an accessories game. I can't show you the bottom of that, but that's got the logo of my my business partner's cigar company.
I'm sorry. Did you think I was excited to hear about this? Did you?
Oh no, I'm going to tell you all about it now. Beautiful cigar cutters with etched blades. Will it focus on that? Etched blades on that. Beautiful. This is a Perdomo brand one. No, cigar smoking is an accessory sport.
Okay. Well, I'm happy for you. Well done.
You learn something new every day.
All right. This is a quick one. I don't know if you know this. I thought as a Christian, I would be interested in your opinion on this.
Okay.
Let me just pull it up.
I'm scared already.
Here we go. Add it to thing. Puerto Rico governor signs law to recognize the fetus as a human being, as critics warn of consequences. Are you across the story?
Look, I'm across the story to a certain degree. So this is on the back of the reversal of the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision in the US, which did not criminalize abortion in America. It removed it as a Supreme Court or as a federal right, and so therefore states could make their own laws regarding abortion. There is a very big global move away from abortion access. And of course, there are people who say, oh, it's terrible for women's rights, etc. By a significant margin, more than half of the people aborted are women. They are baby girls. And I think it's hard to argue that that their rights are less important than those of the women that have been born. This is going to be a contentious issue. I firmly believe that life starts at conception, and if we have the view that human rights are innate to humans, they are a product of both your humanity and the fact that you're alive. If you're a living human being, you have human rights. It's my view that those rights need to apply to babies in the womb. So I'm in support of this. There are a lot of people that are not. This is an issue that splits the libertarian movement almost exactly down the middle. Where everyone, if you're a libertarian, you believe in human rights. The question is, when do you believe that you become a human? And there are people that don't believe you become a human until at some point in gestation. I believe that the only rational place that we can point to is conception. That is when someone's DNA becomes complete and they become a unique human being. They become a unique DNA fingerprint that no one else has ever had and no one else will ever have. I agree with this. It is my view that abortion is taking a human life. That's what it is. So I do agree with this.
Do you know what's interesting? I have never really worried about abortion. I think I said this on the podcast before. I believe there is a time and a place for abortion. It shouldn't be used as a contraceptive tool. It should be reserved for circumstances that, bringing a child into the world would be to a detriment to either the mother or for a host of other things. I think it should be more difficult to get one than it is easy. That being said, I've never had an abortion. I've never even been in a position to even think I need an abortion. I've never been pregnant. But given just how much access we have and education too. So I know some people are very against contraception for religious reasons. I personally, this is just my opinion, I'm against contraception because I'm like, why would I take synthetic hormones in my body? I hate the idea of taking something that alters my biochemistry. So I personally am staunchly against contraceptives for that point of view. But given that you can have education around safe sex, there is contraception methods available. I genuinely like, and I'm not trying to answer this or be a smartass. I don't understand how abortion is still such a talking point, given that in Australia it's mostly legal and it's fairly accessible. In America, it becomes like this massive voting issue. And as a woman, like, I'm happy for someone to try and clear this up for me in the chat. I don't understand how this is such a deal breaker issue. I really don't. Like, that being said, just to clarify, I was never an overly promiscuous girl either. I'm not someone that, was sleeping around. I've never been that girl. And that's not to slut shame, just FYI. It's more so like, it's not been something I've had to think about because I wasn't reckless in that way. But I think a lot of this, when it comes to the left and the progressives, is they want their cake and eat it too. They want to have wild polyamorous sex with God knows what as much as they want and not have the consequences. Yeah. And I just don't understand how this is still such a contentious point when it comes to votes. Am I missing something, or am I like undereducated in this realm?
So I'm going to take us in a bit of a dark direction, but I have touched on this before, and I think we've talked about this before. I'm of the view that I believe in God, and I believe that ultimately history is a struggle between genuine good and genuine evil. And what we've seen with the political left is what I would describe as a death cult. They've come to embrace death as a solution, as an answer to problems.
I would agree.
Not as a problem itself. So the Christian worldview is that the original creation didn't have death. Death has been introduced as a result of sin, which is defiance against God's design. And essentially God's design was broken at that point. And the suffering and the death that we see in the world today was not the way the world was supposed to be. And for those that are knowingly or not working on the side of what I would describe as evil, they view death very, very differently. They view death as a solution. And whether it's euthanasia, whether it's abortion, I would argue that the trans movement is another form of death. Not that it kills the individual, but it kills their ability to have children. It's the end of their bloodline. And we see a world where death is viewed as a legitimate way of, are you sad? Well, how about you? Have you tried death? We'll administer a little bit of death. It won't hurt. And then all your problems will be solved. And somehow that makes sense in the minds of an enormous number of people. And so in that context, it becomes reasonably clear to me that abortion is not actually about women's rights. It's not actually about women's choice. It's not actually about any of that. It's a religious sacrament. They defend it because they believe that death is a solution, that is an acceptable way to solve your problems. And their worldview has to continue to believe that that's the appropriate or an appropriate solution. So for me, this is a part of a much bigger kind of good versus evil issue. Not to say that everyone that supports abortion is necessarily motivated by evil. I would say that they are deceived. That's how I would view it. They're deceived on the sanctity of life. They're deceived regarding when life begins, and they're deceived on the idea that we have the right to decide our own death, even the idea of suicide. And well, it's my last act of control. I'm going to take control over the one last thing that I can control. No, your life was given to you by God. It's not yours to end. And it's not yours to say this suffering is too great or the loneliness is too great or any other excuse. And to end your own life on that basis, it's not yours. It was a gift. It was loaned to you essentially by God, and he made each and every one of us for a reason. And it's not our place and our position to say, no, God, you got that wrong. I've decided something different. But there are people for whom this is really a religious sacrament in a very real sense. And that's going to upset a lot of people, but so be it. What's interesting is that worldwide, we are seeing a movement back away from abortion for a very long time, literally since the sexual revolution. All we've seen is movements in the direction of abortion being more widely available, more publicly acceptable, publicly funded in many cases. more accessible. We have seen people, thankfully it's never gotten any traction here in Australia, but we've seen people get up and argue that abortion post-birth should be legal.
I can't fathom that. That's disgusting.
But again, once you start to accept, they talk about brain development. Oh, well, below 2 years of age, they're not really, human. They haven't reached the human levels of IQ. They're still in the animal levels of IQ.
Is that an actual talking point? Has someone said that?
I'm not going to try and remember their name because I'll probably get it wrong and I'll be defaming somebody. But there have been elected politicians and there are academics in universities in Australia today who have tried to make those arguments.
That is fucking evil.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. To be fair, just to show my ignorance on this issue, I don't really think about this issue. I'm a female voter. I can honestly say unequivocally, I have never thought about abortion when going to the polls. Never.
Yeah.
It's never even crossed my mind. It's not even in the top 100 of issues that I think about. And I'm not saying that to be holier than thou or anything. It's like I'm not religious by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just someone with agency and I understand consequences. I don't know. But yeah, I've seen a lot of this too. And something else, just to take it away from abortion, because I know it's a heated topic. In Canada right now, I've been paying attention to the whole maid situation. Medically assisted, right?
Yeah. Essentially, I can't remember the exact acronym. Yeah.
So MAID is their euthanasia program, basically. And the number was, I'm going to misquote the number. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was a number that was inconceivable. The amount of people that Canada has put to death, essentially, voluntarily. And I was listening to a story.
Voluntarily in inverted quotes.
I was listening to a story of a mother who had a child who, up until a certain point, everything was fine, and got into the wrong crowd, got into the drugs, and this all happened in the space of 18 months. And obviously ended up with some kind of drug-induced, not psychosis, but depression, anxiety. And I think a lot of it was nurture, not nature. And essentially she said it just spiraled. It just got, and because they lived in different states, she wasn't privy to it until too late. And then he tried to do the medical assisted dying once, and something happened and she was able to intercept and stop it. And then something else happened. He tried again and then eventually succeeded on the guise of he's just unhappy and doesn't want to live anymore. There was no genuine, pardon me, concern. There was no terminally ill reason. It was just he didn't want to be here anymore. And I think and I know as a Christian, you'll have your take on this. And I mean, for those who don't know this about me, I was raised in the Catholic Church through the school, but I just look at this and go, how are we at this point with so much technology and so much education that death is still a viable option to people? The whole course of human history up until the 1960s, people were trying to prevent death. And now we're championing it. It's inconceivable to me. I just don't understand.
Well, a bit more sort of, if you go back a bit further in history, actually, almost every culture practiced child sacrifice. And I would argue that abortion is the modern expression of child sacrifice. It used to be, well, we need to sacrifice an infant on the altar to Moloch in the hope that he won't be angry with us and we'll have a better harvest next year. Now it's well, you need to have an abortion so that you can finish your degree and you'll end up with a better career. These are, in my view, two different expressions of actually very much the same thing. And the willingness to end the life of another person in order to improve the lives of those who have already been born, that does seem to be something that has existed in the human psyche for literally thousands of years. We know, for example, that Aztec cultures were engaged in at times massive festivals involving human sacrifice running into the tens of thousands. And then, in fact, one of those had taken place only a very short time before the Spanish arrived in South America and put an end to a lot of that. I'm not saying the Spanish were angels either, but these cultures were not. There are records from early Australian settlers of Aboriginal children just simply being left to die because the parents were running out of food and resources and they needed to go walk about and find another spot where they could live, and the child was a liability and they would leave them to die. The sacrificing of children, of infants, of babies has been a tragic part of the human story for thousands of years. And in my view, it's always been attached to the worship of, well, Moloch particularly is the, historically speaking, are the ones that we have names for, Baal as well. And I would argue that if this is a spiritual war, if this is good versus evil, then the forces that wanted human sacrifice 4,000 years ago are still here. Spirits don't die. And they've found a different expression for the same thing. They're looking for human sacrifice. They package it differently. They've made it socially acceptable, but it was socially acceptable back then in all those cultures as well. It was the leadership, it was the government of the day that was organizing human sacrifices on altars back then. And it's the government of the day here in Australia, in the US, and in most of the world that advocates for and aids and abets human sacrifice, in my view. That's how I characterize it. In the modern age as well. This is an ancient evil with a modern expression.
Yeah. Oh God, that got heavy. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, I've got another topic. I only came across this today. I did email this to you or screenshot it and sent it to you. I don't know if you're across this. Here we go. Luxury car tax nears axing in Australia as Europe free trade talks progress.
Yeah, so I'm not actually across this at all. The only thing I know about it is the screenshot that you sent to me. So I need to do some research on this because this should be some really good news. I've said for a long time that the luxury car tax makes no sense anymore. It was introduced as part of the protection measures for the Australian car manufacturing industry back when we had Holden and Ford and Mitsubishi and others factories here in Australia. That ceased to be the case, more than 10 years ago now. I don't remember exactly when the last manufacturer shut down, but we've not made cars in this country for a very long time. But the luxury car tax, which was brought in to protect the local industry, remained in place because it was a bit of a cash cow for the government. But also because it wasn't indexed, as inflation kicked in and cars got more expensive, they got more complicated, they got heavier, they got bigger. Well, now you can't buy a large family car without attracting some amount of luxury car tax. You want to buy a people mover these days, you're probably going to bump into luxury car tax for a minivan to cart your kids around and get them to and from soccer. So this is a tax that has not been fit for purpose, even for those that defend taxes. This has not been fit for purpose for a very long time. And I think good riddance. And I also need to look into this free trade deal that's apparently being negotiated. I'm somehow that one's missed me.
So the axing of the LCT, a 33% levy. Does that mean a Porsche is going to be 33% cheaper?
So it was below a certain value, there was no tax. And then I think there might have been a couple of graduations. Again, I haven't looked into this. But yes, above a certain threshold, there was a massive amount of tax added to the cost of every single vehicle. So yes, the showroom price of a lot of vehicles should drop. What that means is that if you've recently bought one, sorry, but your depreciation is going to be pretty savage.
That's it. My next car just became a lot cheaper. I'm ready. I'm waiting. I think we talked about this jokingly a little while ago, but the Jeep Wrangler is now over $100,000, and I just can't. I can't understand. Just like, what?
I mean,
that is not a luxury car.
For the technology of a Lada built in the Soviet Union, you'd think you'd be able to get it cheaper than that. But sorry, did that blow land? Did it?
Fine. I choose peace. I want to have violence. I don't know if my boyfriend's asleep or he's still watching, but I'm surprised he hasn't joined in and started weighing in on this. But okay, so I'll wait for you to have a look about that. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
What is my next one? Here we go. He's
just quickly, Carly.
Yes.
I will poke the bear if I wish. So an email went out today, Scott. So just double check your spam filters, etc. So we told everybody you'll get the details a week before. So Monday of the week of the event, that email has gone out. It should have all the details in it. So just double check all your inboxes.
Just to recap, so anyone who bought a ticket, you have been emailed. So as Topher said, check your promotions, check your spam, whatever. Those who haven't opened their email by Wednesday, I will re-email you to try and make sure that you open the email. I can't do much more than that. The venue has been set. We're not publicly saying it for obvious reasons, guys. We don't, and like aside from the fact we don't want the event cancelled, we don't want to cause the venue any grief. So let's just respect the venue and be gracious and not invite trolls to do trolly things. Other than that, please be there by 12:30. We are live streaming it. You guys are getting 3 episodes this week. And we don't want to hold everyone up. We want it to be a good show. So we don't really want you guys barging in at like 12:45, 2:30. Like, please be there on time. That's all I'll say.
And the
Thank
drinking
you.
game will be played, but please drink responsibly and don't get on the road if you're over the limit.
Yeah. So, yeah, the email has all the information. It's all there. If you didn't get the email, let me know. But it has definitely gone out. Anyway, now that we've got that out of the road. Oh, we did have one lady had to cancel. She's had something come up. So there are 2 tickets if anyone would like to come. 2 last-minute tickets.
Right.
So it's on the website.
Topherfield.com, go to the shop, find them, get them.
Yeah. So last minute. All right.
There's a couple of super chats that I'm just going to put up on screen. They relate to the CFMEU that we were discussing earlier. But what is our next topic? Just keeping in mind, it is now after 10 o'clock.
Okay, so I'm going to read a couple of quotes to you. I'm going to read them off my phone just so I don't freeze. And I want you to tell me who said them. Okay, let me just pull them up.
Okay.
Where are we? Hang on a second. I've got them saved in here. All right, so we've talked about a tone shift. There is definitely a tone shift. And you put out a video a little while ago about the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and how things have changed.
Yes.
So I'm going to read you. Yes. Okay, so first one. Tell me who said this. This is recent. These all happened within the last week. Migration went too far. It's disruptive and it's destabilizing and it needs to be fixed in a human way. Who might have said that?
Nigel Farage, Attila the Hun, Orange Man bad.
Okay, so your assumption is it's someone on the right of politics.
Well, I happen to know exactly who it was that said that, but yes, it sounds like a talking point that Donald Trump might have used in 2016.
Well, friends, you'd be happy to know it was none other than Hillary Clinton. She said this recently. And it's interesting because we know this. We know people are rejecting this. We know people have had a gutful of this. And all of a sudden the Democrats are like, quick, let's switch course and act like we were saying this the whole time. Nothing to see here, kids. All right. I do have the article, but we won't go through it today. We'll maybe bring that up on Wednesday. Next quote. We should recognize that the average person doesn't want to have to navigate around a tent city in the middle of downtown. You can't say it's not the fault of the homeless and they can do whatever they want. That's a losing political strategy.
Okay, I don't know who said that. I'm genuinely trying to think who is pivoting now. I'm going to say that's probably Gavin Newsom because he wants to make a run for president.
You would think so, given that his state is the one that's the worst and he has his own scandal. Friends, you would be wonderfully surprised to know that this is none other than ex-president Barack Obama.
Really? Okay.
One Barack Obama said this.
There you go. Okay.
All right, next one. Countries that avoided mass immigration and negative population growth may be better positioned for the future because they have stronger incentives to adopt AI and automation.
Wait, that's a bit of a non sequitur. Okay. Who would have said that? I mean, the AI and automation thing's a little bit left field there. I don't know.
None other than Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock.
Okay. Interesting.
I think he's talking about Poland. And there's a couple more. But yeah, I just thought how fascinating. In the space of a week, the messaging has been flipped on its head.
The tone shift is enormous. The video that I did focused particularly around energy, and it was what was said at the World Economic Forum with regard to energy, nuclear in particular, but the inadequacy of renewables, wind and solar, for powering server farms and meeting baseload type needs. And the point that was made there by person after person, in the World Economic Forum was that the energy density just isn't there. This is a distributed energy source. Even if we put on rose-colored glasses and look on solar farms favorably, you need a vast area that power then has to be gathered essentially and coordinated in with each other to end up with reliable baseload power running in the megawatts continuously for a single server farm. it just isn't viable. And we know it's not viable, not only because of what's being said at the World Economic Forum, but also because Meta recently signed deals with 3 different nuclear power providers in the US to either extend the life of existing power plants or to build new ones to power the AI server farms that they're building. Donald Trump has come out and said to all of the AI companies, you cannot expect to use, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but don't think you're going to get your power from the grid at the expense of the mum and dad power users and power consumers. You need to figure out how you're going to provide your own power. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what his policy position now is. And all of those companies are responding. Most of them are responding with nuclear, some with a couple of other options. But there is a radical tone shift. There is on social issues, on practical issues like energy and net zero. Are they where we would like them to be? No, not yet. But boy, have they changed since 12 months ago.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating. And it's the people who were the architects for the mess that we're in now who are doing the 180. So,
100%.
all right, last one I want to touch on, and the reason I bring this up, I'm just going to give you context before I show you the thing, is Australia, unfortunately, we're always lagging with a lot of this nonsense, right? So we're at the tail end of woke, but in Australia, unfortunately, it still does have a chokehold on a considerable part of the population. But we always knew there was going to be things that would fracture them and make them start to go, hang on a minute, I'm on a losing team. Hang on a minute, I don't agree with that. Because the train keeps moving, to use your analogy. And
Yes.
so there's a page that I follow, and it's run by like your old school feminist, right? She's your Jermaine Greer, OG feminist.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about this page to give you more context than that, other than she's a boomer. She's a boomer feminist. And she posted this, and it just caught my attention because this is going to be one of those things that fractures the base. So I will show you the article in 2 seconds. We've got 2 things that are happening at the same time. One, a woman was raped, right? So you would think as a feminist, you're going to speak up about this. 2,
Sure.
there is a race element to this, and a female white judge has given her her decision, and it's repulsive. So now that I've said that, I'm going to bring up this article. So Topher, I don't know if you've seen this. So this judge, this is the judge, she called the perpetrator a wonderful young man with a bright future, and she said that sentencing him pains her. This man raped a woman violently. So I'm going to read you this very quickly.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're not talking about a date where afterwards someone said, "Hey, I'm not happy with what happened." This was a active violent case.
Yes, yeah. So 2 seconds. I will look. Okay. So I'm going to read the case to you guys. Actually, I'll read the proper article. Let me just pull it up. So can you see me, or am I frozen?
You're frozen.
Sorry, guys. I don't know why that's happening. Okay, so this happened here in Australia, in Toowoomba. A district court judge called, I can't say this, Dzida, Balik, was sentencing Thon Monluk Deng Anugi for the rape of a young woman in a park. The victim now lives in deep fear, struggles to sleep, and is deeply traumatized emotionally and psychologically. The woman's family is also enduring unimaginable pain and trauma. But it's all good because the rapist is a hard worker and a wonderful young man. In sentencing the rapist, she said, "This is a very difficult sentence for me." And then it goes on to have this person's opinion. So I'm just going to scroll through these carousels. So this is the judge who had a hard time sentencing this man who violently raped a woman and has said that he has a bright young future. And so that being said, that's about all I've got. I don't have the full article in front of me. I've just got this particular post. And the reason I brought this particular post up is because now there's 2 issues at war here, and the woke have to pick a side. So either rape point blank is bad, or there is a 2-tier system here. Rape from someone from Africa is not as bad because they're higher on the victim totem pole. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? So
no, it's the ranking issue.
yeah, and this is going to be what actually fractures them open, because rape,
And it
in
needs
my
to.
opinion, yeah, I agree. Rape, in my opinion, abominable. That's one of the worst things that can happen. And anyone who rapes anyone should be jailed accordingly. And in my opinion, a rapist should be castrated. I know that's a bit controversial, but sorry, you rape, you lose it. That's my opinion. You guys can argue in the comments. And and all the guys are like just cupping their balls all of a sudden. No, but this is the thing. If it's a violent sexual assault and you have been proven unequivocally, or like there's visual proof. I mean, the ones that are a bit more nebulous, I understand there's the gray there. I mean, the ones that are violent, and it's also someone that's done it a few times, right? Like if it's they've been caught a few times. But with something
if someone's a serial rapist, I think that threshold can be crossed. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm being facetious, but you guys get my sentiment. I don't think anyone who is proven to have been guilty of rape should be let off in any way, shape, or form. But this woman, a white woman, I'm going to assume she's progressive, because that's the only person that can make that comment would have to be a very progressive judge.
But also, I would add to that, you cannot be a judge without being progressive. It is a closed club, and they are. If have a look at how detached our politicians are from the attitudes of the general public. In my opinion, the judiciary in this country are 5 times more removed from the realities and the attitudes of the general public.
Yeah. And so this man, I'll just go back to the page, is just to state the obvious for those who are listening, not watching. He's a Black African man. I don't know what part of Africa. I'm going to assume Nigerian, Sudanese, somewhere around there. Who knows? I don't know. That's speculation. Because of his skin color, this judge is treading lightly, and that sickens me. And this is actually how racism develops.
Yeah,
by
100%.
Having a 2-tier system like this is what fires up the base of the people who already have this preconceived notion to all African migrants. And this is what really makes that sentiment grow, that none of these
100%.
people should be here. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be here. I'm saying that this is what makes that sentiment grow and really start to carry weight. Because if these people migrate to Australia and perpetrate one of the worst crimes, but are treated differently to a white man committing the exact same crime, none of this makes sense.
And this is why I bang on so much about you have to treat every individual as an individual. This individual needs to be treated on the basis of the crimes that he's committed. And to see anything less, to see him be treated as a member of a group and protected because of his membership of a group, that then causes community attitudes towards the entire group to be affected. We have to treat people as individuals. That's not cold-hearted. That's actually, people say, oh, but we have to treat migrants more kindly because of what they've been through. No, if you do that, you create problems for every migrant, including the ones that are working hard and fitting in and becoming Australians and adopting our values and blah, blah, blah. You make their lives worse because you failed to treat an individual rapist as a rapist and sentence him accordingly. This is, I mean, you've already said it. This is what causes things like, well, the Cronulla alleged race riots, right? That was because the police were failing to deal with in this case, a group of individuals. A bunch of people were causing problems relentlessly at the Cronulla beach. There was an assault on a lifeguard and people reacted accordingly. Why? Because nothing was being done to actually hold the individuals who were responsible for that accountable. That had dragged on for quite some time, and eventually people reacted. And of course, the media portrayed it as a bunch of intolerant Aussies and a race riot and all the rest of it. That's like, this is how you get there, is by failing to deal with the individuals who need to be dealt with. The same's true in Victoria with, with the machete crime, the home invasions, the car stealing. These people need to be dealt with harshly. If you don't, you're not protecting migrants, you are failing them.
I would agree. And I mean, I've said, I'm going to repeat myself, but I have no issue with your skin color, where you come from. If you are a productive member of society, if you come here to make the world better, like Australia better, I'm all on board with that. But this kind of sentiment is what makes people resent these people and not want them here. And that worries me, because You know, like you're not, you know, it's that whole individual argument, right?
But it's the Hegelian dialectic again, where it is in their interest to have us divided. And it is in the interest of politicians for people to be divided, to be able to pit one group of people against another group of people. Unity is not a politician's friend. Division is a politician's friend. And so they don't have an incentive to do things the right way that would actually cause us to be able to come together. They say, you know, we need to come together as one, blah, blah, blah. But then they treat us all as different groups, different interest groups, and they pit our interests against each other to keep us divided. So in the Hegelian dialectic, you don't do the thing that's going to take you closer to what you want. You do the thing that's going to cause other people to react in a way that takes you closer to what you want. And so getting the reaction, having people be outraged, even though that outrage is completely justifiable, that is what stokes the division, and the division is in their interest. I'm sorry, it is that cynical. It is that cynical.
Yeah. But I just thought it was interesting because, I mean, the thing that they say doesn't happen happens all the time, but now it's happening in these lefty conversations and they can't defend it, and it's fracturing them. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch, because this is not a one-off. This is an ongoing thing. And you know, sorry, I was going to say also with like the youth crime and stuff like that down here in Victoria, that is also causing a lot of bolt-on Labor supporters to lose favour with Justin Allen.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the idea of a rusted-on Labor supporter, a rusted-on Liberal supporter, these people that they become a part of the machine. You can't separate them. Well, if something rusts for long enough, eventually it rusts through. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing happening with the Labor Party and the Liberal Party, Liberal National Party federally, Labor Party in a number of states, Victoria being a particularly obvious one, where people have been attached to them for so long that party has been able to take it for granted for so long. I mean, the Labor Party think they're born to rule in Victoria. They think it's their state. I've talked before about the one-party state dynamic and how it rewards extremism, and that's what we've seen in Daniel Andrews. That's what we're witnessing with Jacinta Allen. They have become the cause of their own destruction because they got so comfortable with people being rusted on that actually now they've kind of rusted away. They've rusted to nothing. There's no substance there. Now they're being exposed. We can see through that apparatus. We can see through the Labor Party. We can see through the lies. We saw the same thing happen with the LGBTQ plus WTF BBQ movement, where the LGBs wanted to divorce from the TQs, and we've seen that whole movement split as a result of trying to out-progressive themselves, trying to keep that train going to the next station, to go back to my old analogy. And we're watching the same thing happen with the pro-immigration side of things, where they've become so instinctively in support of anything immigrant that they can't even apply basic law and order. And now it's actually eaten through the very structure of their ideology. This is only going to accelerate the social change that is already on. We've talked about it before. I won't do it to death here. There is a massive global change happening, and things like this are not the cause of that change, but things like this are accelerating that change.
I have two more things to mention, but these are sort of quick fire. This is an update to the Bike Boy scandal. So Daniel Andrews has finally lodged his defense, and it was actually quite explosive. He's saying, naturally, it's all politically motivated. It's an extortion attempt. And the people working behind the scenes with Ryan Muellerman are the people who are politically motivated to defend Dan. So this is really interesting. And I hate saying this to people, but Dan does have a good defense. As much as you're all going to be like, oh, I hate him. Yes, I'm on the page with you guys. I'm saying his defense, as far as defamation goes, it doesn't look good, because unfortunately for Ryan Muellerman, he's not the one that's been setting up a lot of this. It's all the people behind the scenes. So it really depends on how the judge perceives this and how it's argued. But this is an interesting tactic. It's disgusting, but it's one I expected Daniel Andrews to take. So this is going to be a very, very interesting defamation case. What do you think?
You don't get to be where Daniel Andrews is without having a pretty Machiavellian instinct streak in you. And I think that's on full display here. This is clever. This is whether it was Daniel Andrews, whether it was a defense team, whoever said, hey, let's take this angle. This is clever. it's clever because I think it would be very hard to argue that that's not correct to some degree. Yeah, I think it'd be very, very hard to argue that's not correct. Does that change the substance of whether or not he defamed Ryan Muehlman? That'll be the question. So the risk that he runs, it might seem like a compelling argument, but my opinion would be that that's the motive for the defamation case is not relevant to the question of whether the defamation took place. And so what I'll be watching for is to see, does the judge actually allow that argument and say, yes, I'm going to consider this to be relevant? Or does the judge say, this doesn't actually alter the substance of whether or not Ryan Muehlman was defamed by Daniel Andrews? The motivation for the defamation case doesn't change the substance of the case. So if the judge chooses to be focused on the substance, then I don't think it'll make any difference at all. I think it'll get swatted aside very easily. However, this is the former Victorian Premier being tried in a Victorian court, and a fair day in court for Ryan Muehlman and his team is where there's no guarantee that they're going to get one.
Yeah, and I think, look, I'm all on the same page, just so you guys know. I agree with all your sentiments, but I think in everyone's bloodlust to try and see his head roll, metaphorically speaking, not physically, metaphorically, I feel like this one is not going to go the way that people hope. And it's also, just to be clear, this is a civil lawsuit. It's a defamation trial. This is not criminal. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to bring his name back up again. It's going to drag him through the mud. But what I found really interesting is, you know, how all the speculation around whether or not he's had a stroke or he's had something where he's out of sorts. It's the same as like when he fell down the stairs, everyone said it was like Lindsay Fox's son or someone that bashed him or whatever. The commentary from the left now is he's a private citizen. It's none of our business. And my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my opinion is, so long as the Victorian taxpayers are footing the bill for his retirement, what's going on with him is entirely our business. Sorry, I deserve to know.
But also what happened when the things that he did when he was on the taxpayers' payroll still matter even after he retires. And I'm sorry, just because you become a private citizen now, it doesn't suddenly make you immune to a defamation proceeding. That applies to everybody. Now, that side of things is just them trying to sort of play the world's smallest violin for him. Oh, leave the poor man alone. No, look, I will put the shoe on the other foot here, though, and say, in some sense, the outcome of the case isn't all that relevant. People like Daniel Andrews made an art form out of punishing people by process. That's what he did to me with having me pursued for 2.5 years. Now, not him personally, but that's what he did with the weaponized Victoria Police, pursuing me for 2.5 years for incitement charges that were never going to stick. The police were the ones that kept adjourning. They were dragging this thing out for as long as they possibly could. The process was the punishment. I would love to think that Daniel Andrews is being dragged through the mud and dragged through court, successful or otherwise, for the rest of his days. I think that that's only fair given what he's done to so many other people. So, I wouldn't assume that just because on paper that seems like a pretty compelling argument, I wouldn't assume that dooms the case. It may do. I'm not predicting the outcome. It may do, but I wouldn't presume that it does. And I think that there is a lot to be said for him just finding that his sins keep catching up to him, and he's constantly playing defense. He's constantly fending off attacks. He is constantly being punished by process for the rest of his days. I think that's only fair.
That's the punishment. I mean, I know what everyone wants. They want him in jail, but I would argue the life that he's living is a pretty fucked way to go anyway. Yes, I know he's got his millions. He lives in a nice house. I get all that. What I'm saying is, he's going to be forever looking over his shoulder. He can't do any of the things that you and I can do. So, yeah, prison, yep. He's in a 4x4 cell or whatever. But I'd argue he's in a prison of his own making right now too.
Yeah, and karma has a way of catching up with people. You can't live like that and think that you get to just ride off into the sunset. That's not how this works. And I think it's on us to make sure that that's not how this works in his case. He is, in my opinion, the worst human rights abuser that modern Australia has seen. He is responsible for the death. Yeah.
He's in the big colouring book.
That's right. He's responsible, in my opinion, for the deaths of people due to decisions that he signed off on, whether he made the decision or not. He signed off on it. That happened under his watch. If he was the director of a company that did the kinds of things that the Victorian government did, then you better believe he'd be being dragged through court for the deaths of 801 people as a result of negligence that occurred on his watch. I have no sympathy whatsoever for the process that he gets dragged through, and the quality of life that he leads for the rest of his days. There will never be any sympathy from me. I'm a Christian. I hope he finds salvation. I hope he finds God before he dies. I don't wish hell on anyone, but I don't have to wish him to have a happily ever after either.
Last thing I'll bring up, you guys have heard me talk about chicken in the noodle aisle, so quickly have a drink.
Have we? Yes.
I have a new one. It's called Gutter Gardens. So every chapter of the book has its own analogy. And Gutter Gardens is my weeds in the pavement analogy now. So
sure.
I went to Southland quickly before, and I haven't driven up that way for, I don't know, like maybe 3 months. And I didn't realize how bad it was. So I had to pull over at one point to get some footage. And I just want to show you guys something. I'm just going to, hang on. Oh, I've got to add it to the stage. Will it not? Why won't it add? Is it not adding? That's weird. Hang on, let me try again. Video file. That's weird. You can't see that, can you?
No.
Why won't it add to the stage? Can you add it from your end?
No, I can't add it. The button, I mean, it says it's been added.
There we go. I'll play it one more time.
Yep. Now, Carly, what you're missing is the Victorian government is able to get carbon offsets for the regreening, for the regrowth. This is part of fighting climate change, Carly. You should be happy. This should make your heart sing. We're saving the planet. We are giving Greta Thunberg back her childhood and her dreams.
Yeah. So my gutter garden analogy is basically just how we've accepted this, and through our apathy, we now live in more and more decay, and we also are kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Accepting it as our normal. It's always been like this. This is our new baseline. I've got a video that I'll try and get up by the end of the week. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys the footage so that you know what I'm talking about. That wasn't even the worst part. That was just the bit that I pulled over for.
So can I put in a request? I'm noticing a theme as the segments get edited from the Oddcast, and then you make the thumbnails. Every single Oddcast, there's at least one segment where I look at the thumbnail, and essentially the thumbnail, which Carly makes the thumbnails, by the way, that's why they look so good. The thumbnail is basically Australians are shit. There is an Australians are shit segment that happens in basically every Oddcast. And look, I don't feel great putting those up. It doesn't make my heart sing.
To be fair, you're not saying it, I am. So if anyone's going to get roasted for it, it's me.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm putting that up on my channel, and that's the thumbnail. And look, Australia's got problems, and some of them are cultural, which is what you're pointing out there. You're not wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. But I don't love that content.
You don't love that content. That's fine. We can not talk about it.
Do it as a coffee table book.
Hey?
Do it as a coffee table book. Just Australians are shit folio version, right?
I'm not saying all Australians. Don't paint me in that thing. My point is that I worry that people aren't paying enough attention to this. Isn't a new thing, and it's the apathy that's landed us here. And if we let it go too long, then we end up with a diabolical mess to clean up, and everyone sort of goes, shit, where do I start?
Yeah, no, look, I don't disagree. I'm starting to get eaten alive by insects because I had to leave the studio door open. Otherwise, it would have overheated. And you know how we said tonight was going to be a short one because we were starting late?
Yeah, it was not. It's never
Yeah.
short. I talk too much.
Didn't work out that way. Didn't work out that way. Okay. Now, also, we have failed again. G correctly pointed out that we do not self-promote anywhere near as much as we should. So everybody, jump onto topherfield.com and get the last tickets to the Oddcast birthday. I don't know if they're sold out or not. Get on there if you haven't got them yet. The birthday is this Saturday. We will make sure you get the email for all the details. Everyone who has a ticket, you have an email somewhere in one of your inboxes, promotions, something somewhere, it's there. Jump on to topherfield.com, go to the shop, get your seat on the Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass. This is where we talk about things like agency, getting your head in the game, the various things that I had to do to get from my genuinely worst year of my life in 2024 to the best year of my life in 2025. And I ran the course the first time in 2024. I was in the thick of it. This was the work that I was doing in and on myself. The feedback from the course was amazing. So get on that while we have the early bird going. So that's available at the shop as well. Oh, also, for those that are coming to the party, Carly has designed a new merch drop and you will be the first people to see it. It will not even go up on my socials until after the Oddcast birthday. You'll be the first people to see it and you'll be the first people who have a chance to get it. So bring some cash. We will have card facilities there for those that need it, but cash is just easier. Bring some cash to the birthday party if you want to get a t-shirt or a hoodie or other stuff. Cool. There you go. That's the self-promotion. We're done. We're out. I need to go to bed. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Carly. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Bye.